A family moves to Florida, buys a house, and 6 months later gets an insurance renewal for $9,400 a year. Another family buys in a subdivision built on limestone so thin the ground has collapsed more than 6,000 times in a single county. A third family purchases a condo in 2023 and gets hit with a $200,000 special assessment. The listing never went mentioned. Florida is not one place. It is dozens of different markets with completely different risks. And every one of them can be measured against 3 tests. First, can you actually insure the property at a number that does not wreck your monthly budget? Second, is inventory stable, or is it building up because buyers are already walking away? Third, are people still choosing to arrive, or are the net migration numbers starting to move the other direction? A city that passes all 3 tests is a foundation. A city that fails them is a trap that does not reveal itself until after closing. We looked at 10 Florida markets. 6 are cities where the insurance numbers, the geology, and the disaster history say you will regret the move. And 4 are cities where all 3 tests come back clean. First up on the regret side, Kissimmee, the tourist corridor town that charges you to live next to a theme park and gives you almost nothing in return. Kissimmee sits in Osceola County along the Interstate 4 corridor between Tampa and Orlando. The proximity to Walt Disney World is the entire sales pitch. Newcomers see homes in the $250,000 to $320,000 range and assume they are getting a deal. They are not. What the listing does not show you is the Community Development District fee. Osceola County has more active CDDs than almost any county in the state. These are separate taxing districts layered on top of your property taxes and your HOA. A typical CDD assessment runs $2,000 to $4,000 per year, and unlike an HOA fee, you cannot vote it down. It is a lien on the property. According to Zillow, median values have dropped roughly 3% year over year as buyers figure this out. Add above-average property crime, traffic that turns 10 miles into 45 minutes during tourist season, and the fact that Central Florida sits in the state's sinkhole and flood zone. You are paying for proximity to a vacation, not for a place to build a life. And at least in Kissimmee, the ground under your house stays put. The next city cannot say that. Next, Ocala, the fastest growing metro in Florida that is building faster than the ground can support. Ocala, in Marion County, has been the headline migration story for 3 years. Affordable homes, horse country charm, cost of living roughly 15% below the state average. It sounds ideal, but Marion County sits directly inside Florida's sinkhole corridor. The Florida Geological Survey maps dense clusters of subsidence incidents across the county, with shallow limestone and natural groundwater movement creating ongoing risk. In 2019, a sinkhole opened beneath a residential property on Southwest 62nd Street in Ocala without warning, swallowing a section of the yard and damaging the foundation before the owners knew anything had shifted. The family filed a claim. Their standard homeowner's policy denied it. Sinkhole damage is not covered unless you purchase a separate endorsement, one that most buyers never learn about until after closing. That story is not unusual in Marion County. Sinkhole claims here are among the highest per capita in the state, and the endorsement, when carriers will even write it, adds meaningfully to your annual premium. On top of the geology, Ocala's infrastructure has not kept pace with its growth. Roads built for a small agricultural county now carry traffic from a metro that added tens of thousands of residents in under 5 years. According to Redfin, inventory has climbed sharply, with homes sitting on the market significantly longer than a year ago. The boom brought builders. The infrastructure and the ground underneath did not follow, and Ocala is just in the corridor. The next city holds the national record. Third, Spring Hill, the community that holds the title of sinkhole capital of the entire United States. Spring Hill in Hernando County is an unincorporated community of over 120,000 people on Florida's west central Gulf Coast, about an hour north of Tampa. Median home values sit around $240,000, well below the statewide number. And that price is low for a reason the listing will never mention. According to Hernando County records and the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, Spring Hill ranks #1 in the nation for verified sinkholes. Approximately 1/4 of all sinkholes in Florida occur in Hernando County alone. Between 2000 and 2013, The county property appraiser's office logged over 6,000 sinkhole incidents. Heavy rains and the region's thin limestone layer create conditions where the ground can open without warning. In 2014, one Spring Hill sinkhole measured 30 feet deep and 105 feet wide, forcing 4 homes to evacuate within 48 hours. The entire area sits in Sinkhole Alley, a corridor running through Hernando, Pasco, and Hillsborough counties that accounts for 66% of all sinkhole insurance claims in the state. And standard homeowners insurance does not automatically cover it. You have to request a sinkhole endorsement, and many carriers in this corridor either refuse to write it or price it out of reach. Spring Hill's prices are low because the ground it sits on is not reliable. Spring Hill is the geology problem. The next city is what happens when the infrastructure problem is just as bad. Fourth, Lehigh Acres. The sprawling grid of streets that was never designed to be a real city and still is not one. Lehigh Acres sits in Lee County, east of Fort Myers. Population is over 130,000, but there is no city government, no downtown, no public hospital, and no municipal water or sewer for large portions of the community. The road grid was platted in the 1950s by a developer who sold parcels sight unseen to buyers in the Northeast. Many were in flood zones with no utility access. That original pattern was never corrected. When Hurricane Ian made landfall in Lee County in September 2022 as a Category 4 storm, it caused an estimated $112.9 billion in damage across southwest Florida. Lehigh Acres took significant wind and flood damage in neighborhoods with no storm drainage infrastructure. According to ATM data, Lee County saw one of the highest foreclosure rates among major metros in the quarters following the storm. Insurance carriers pulled out or tripled premiums. A homeowner here can expect $5,000 to over $10,000 a year in property insurance. The median home price hovers around $270,000. But without a city government to maintain roads or manage drainage, every homeowner is on their own. The nearest trauma center is in Fort Myers, a 30 to 45-minute drive from the eastern edge. The price is low. The infrastructure to support it is not there. Lehigh Acres never had a city to lose. The next city on this list had one, and then a Category 5 took it. Fifth, Panama City. The Panhandle city that took a direct hit from a Category 5 hurricane and is still rebuilding 8 years later. In October 2018, Hurricane Michael made landfall near Panama City as a Category 5 storm, the first to hit the Florida Panhandle at that intensity in recorded history. Wind speeds exceeded 160 miles per hour. Damage was estimated at $25.5 billion. Nearby Mexico Beach was essentially flattened. 8 years later, the recovery is still incomplete. Drive through Millville, the working-class neighborhood directly south of downtown, and you will see blue tarps on roof lines, boarded windows, and empty lots where homes used to stand. The Marina District has seen partial commercial recovery, but blocks away from it, the storm damage is still visible on structures that have sat untouched for years. Over $39 million in federal housing recovery funds were allocated for Panama City and Bay County alone, and the rebuilding timeline has stretched years beyond projections. The insurance market never fully returned. Multiple carriers exited Bay County after Michael, and those that remain charge premiums reflecting the demonstrated risk. Florida hurricane insurance now ranges from $5,500 to over $12,000 a year, and coastal Bay County sits at the upper end. Tyndall Air Force Base, one of the county's largest employers, suffered catastrophic damage and is still in the middle of a multi-billion-dollar rebuild. The median home price sits around $270,000. For that number, you are buying into a market that took the worst hurricane hit in modern Florida history and has not fully recovered. The price reflects the risk. The listing does not say it out loud. Panama City is still rebuilding from one catastrophic event. The last regret city is dealing with 3 at the same time. And finally, the 6th regret city, and the one where the most factors broke at the same time, Fort Lauderdale. The South Florida city where the water is rising from below and the costs are falling from above. Fort Lauderdale in Broward County has always been marketed as a more affordable alternative to Miami. But 3 forces converged between 2022 and 2026 that fundamentally changed the math. First, the flooding. In April 2023, Fort Lauderdale received over 25 inches of rain in a single 24-hour period, the heaviest rainfall event in the city's recorded history. Entire neighborhoods went underwater. It hit areas that had never flooded before. Repeated flooding in 2024 and 2025 confirmed the drainage infrastructure cannot handle what climate patterns are now delivering. Second, the condo crisis. After the Surfside building collapse in 2021, Florida passed new structural inspection and reserve funding requirements. The result has been a wave of special assessments hitting condo owners across Broward County. Individual unit owners have received bills ranging from $25,000 to over $200,000 for structural repairs, their buildings deferred for years. Condo values in parts of Broward County have dropped nearly 10% year over year. Third, the insurance. Broward County's combination of hurricane exposure, flood history, and aging buildings has made it one of the most expensive counties in Florida to insure. A homeowner here can expect premiums north of $8,000 a year, with flood insurance adding another $2,000 to $4,000 on top. The median home price is roughly $400,000. At a $400,000 purchase price, your property taxes run roughly $6,000 to $8,000 a year. Add insurance and flood coverage at $12,000. Add even a modest special assessment, averaged over 5 years, and you are at $30,000 annually before a single mortgage payment. Fort Lauderdale is not failing because one thing broke. The water, the buildings, and the insurance all broke at the same time. So if the coast floods, the cheap markets sit on unstable ground, and the insurance is unmanageable, where do you actually go? There are 4 cities where all 3 numbers work. Here is the first one. Trust City number 4, Dunedin, the walkable Gulf Coast town that quietly became one of the most stable small markets in the state. Dunedin sits on the Pinellas County coast, just north of Clearwater, with a population of about 40,000. It has a walkable downtown with locally owned restaurants and shops, a craft brewery district, and direct access to both Honeymoon Island and Caladesi Island, consistently ranked among the best beaches in the country. But the reason it earns a spot on this list is not the charm, it is the stability. Dunedin's housing market has held value more consistently than almost any comparable coastal town in Florida. Prices have not spiked and crashed the way they have in Cape Coral or Fort Lauderdale, because Dunedin never attracted the speculative investor wave. The housing stock is primarily owner-occupied single-family homes, not investor-owned condos. Pinellas County has one of the lowest sinkhole risk profiles on the Gulf Coast side, and the city's position on the bay side of the Barrier Islands provides more natural storm surge protection than open Gulf-facing communities. Insurance premiums here are lower than in Lee or Charlotte County by a significant margin. The median home value sits around $370,000. Compare that directly to Fort Lauderdale at $400,000, where your insurance is double, your flood risk is documented, and your condo could come with an assessment the listing never mentioned. In Dunedin, the price reflects the house, not the risk. Insurance, manageable. Inventory, stable. Net migration, still positive. All 3 tests, passed. Trust City number 3, Gainesville, the university-anchored inland city with a medical center, a stable economy, and almost no hurricane history. Gainesville sits in Alachua County in north-central Florida, roughly 70 miles inland from either coast. The University of Florida and UF Health Shands Hospital are the economic anchors, employing tens of thousands and drawing a constant flow of students, researchers, and medical professionals. University towns do not experience the same boom and bust cycles as tourism or speculation-driven markets. The median home price sits around $280,000. For that price, you get a Level 1 trauma center, a nationally ranked research university, a cost of living below the state average, and a verifiable track record of avoiding major hurricane damage. Gainesville's inland position means it has dodged the direct hits that devastated the coasts. It is not in a sinkhole corridor, not in a storm surge zone, and not dependent on a single industry. The honest downside is that Gainesville is a college town, and the pace reflects that. If you want Gulf beaches, this is not it. But if you want a stable, affordable Florida city where the hospital, the economy, and the ground underneath your house are all reliable, insurance affordable, inventory controlled, migration net positive, Gainesville earns that trust. Trust city number 2, St. Augustine. The oldest city in America, with one of the strongest county economies in Florida. St. Augustine sits in St. Johns County on Florida's northeast coast. Founded in 1565, it is the oldest continuously occupied European settlement in the United States. And that history is not just a tourism brochure. Over 6 million visitors a year support a service economy that provides steady employment without the seasonal volatility of a theme park market. The real story is the county. St. Johns County consistently ranks as one of the safest, highest-performing counties in the state. The school district is rated among the best in Florida. The crime rate is well below average, and the housing market has shown more resilience than the overheated Southwest Florida corridor. The median home price sits around $400,000, the same number as Fort Lauderdale. That is the comparison that matters. You can buy into St. Augustine at Fort Lauderdale's price, but your insurance is thousands less per year. There is no condo assessment wave, and the Northeast Coast has historically taken fewer direct hurricane hits than the Gulf side or Broward County. Same price, different math entirely. Insurance premiums in St. Johns County run significantly lower than in Broward or Lehigh County. There is no special assessment crisis lurking in aging condo towers. All 3 tests clear. The honest assessment is that St. Augustine is not a bargain. But unlike Kissimmee at half the price, every dollar here goes into the city itself, not into a CDD fee you did not know existed. And finally, trust city number 1 on our list, and the strongest overall market we found, Pensacola. The Gulf Coast city with a military-anchored economy, affordable waterfront living, and a genuine downtown most Florida cities lost decades ago. Pensacola sits in Escambia County at the western tip of the Panhandle. Naval Air Station Pensacola, the home of naval aviation and the Blue Angels, is the economic backbone. Military installations do not relocate. They do not get acquired by private equity. They do not file for bankruptcy. That makes Pensacola's primary employer the most stable anchor on this entire list. The median home price sits around $260,000. For that, you are within 20 minutes of Gulf beaches on Pensacola Beach and Perdido Key, in a city with a walkable downtown that has independent restaurants, a thriving arts district, and a waterfront that belongs to the public. Cost of living sits roughly 12% below the national average, and there is no state income tax. The honest take: Pensacola is in the western panhandle, so hurricane risk is real. Ivan hit in 2004. Sally hit in 2020. But unlike Panama City, Pensacola has rebuilt fully after every storm, and the military presence means federal recovery resources arrive faster and at larger scale. Insurance premiums are elevated compared to inland markets, but remain below the worst corridors in Lee, Charlotte, or Broward County. Picture this: you wake up in a paid-off home 15 minutes from the Gulf. Your insurance is manageable, your downtown has a coffee shop that knows your order. The largest employer in town has been operating since 1914 and is not going anywhere. And your monthly carrying cost is less than what a condo owner in Fort Lauderdale pays in assessments alone. Insurance: manageable. Inventory: stable. Net migration: people are still choosing to arrive. That is Pensacola. That is why it sits at the top of this list. If this is the kind of research you do before a big financial decision, subscribe. I cover markets like this every single week. The data behind the listing price, not just the listing price.